Are you interested in promoting or increasing the attendance of your truck and tractor pull event? My name is Jason Schultz, owner of the Beer Money Pulling Team, which has over 1.3 million followers across Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok. Our goal is to grow the sport of truck and tractor pulling and increase the awareness of the sport through our social media presence and highly engaged audience. We want to partner with you and help you grow the attendance of your event. We have a ton of promotional opportunities available and a full-time social media coordinator to make sure your investment is taken care of. For more information on promotional opportunities, give me a call, 608-604-5068.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another Let's Grow Pulling Live. We were supposed to have Gary Collins joining us tonight, but he's got some technical difficulties. Doug is behind the scenes trying to help him sort that out. So we'll kind of fill some time here. Hopefully we can have him on. Chatted with Doug prior to the show, and in addition to Gary's interesting life and what he did in the sport, particularly in the 1980s, we'll get a little behind-the-scenes look at sort of the downfall of tractor pulling on the big arena circuit and how we got replaced with monster trucks. If he can join us, I really want to hear that story from him. In the meantime, though, fresh off the rumor mill, as in like 4 minutes ago, hearing rumors that there's going to be some new mini rod rules coming to do with roll cages. So see what direction that takes. It's, I think, as we head into next week, one of the biggest weeks in the sport with the Farm Machinery Show, there is just going to be announcements flying everywhere on all fronts, including our own. Hopefully we'll have everything ready to tell you about who's going to be at the Pullers Championship come May. We know who the top vote getters are. I should say Brent knows. But as we did after the first round, we're going to just make sure that the top vote getters are going to commit and actually join us before we start releasing the names. So look for that. Cody, Ryan, what's new in your world?
Not a whole lot. Getting ready for Louisville next week and getting caught up on everything that I'm behind on.
I think you only ever get back to zero. You never get ahead.
Yeah, I feel like I haven't got back to zero yet, so it's still working on that one.
Me, on the other hand, I'm falling further and further behind. Nature of the beast.
Yeah.
Sometimes you just raise your hands and say, I give up.
Yep.
Yeah.
So one idea that we did talk about briefly beforehand, before getting into this, about something we could at least spend a little bit of time on, and I think it's certainly worthwhile. And a question came up yesterday, kind of asking the general framework of this. The gist of this is that there's one thing about your club or local association that if you could change it for the better, what would it be? And for once, I feel like there's actually some healthy conversation emerging out of that. And what I also find interesting is that much of the commentary is the same things we all universally cannot stand, because it seems to be just a common problem everywhere. Things like starting on time, things like enforcing the rules you already do have, stuff like that. I don't know. I probably sit a little closer to the fire maybe than you two, because I've done a turn on a board with a pulling association, and I kind of know the other side of that too. It's hard to get all the ducks in a row, so to speak. That's always a challenge. Anytime an enterprise such as this, you show up at an event, we talk about behind the scenes how much work it takes from staffing. But it's more than that. I mean, the pullers have to participate in the process as well. You're looking at trying to get a couple hundred people on a given some nights to all do the same thing in an orderly way. I don't know, guys. Whatever you guys feel out there in the comments, jump in there and share a few as well. Yeah, Shane, time between hooks. There's one that has not been said in this discussion already, but it is a big one. Having a crew that's efficient and on the ball at doing their job putting a track back together. It helps when you got a 2-track format because there's always something else to watch on the other side. But that the track crew can break a show real fast.
Mm-hmm.
For me, I agree with Shane. It's track crew. Something else that I thought about a lot was, coming from a photographer side, the lighting. The lighting can be really good in spots and really bad in other spots. And as a spectator, if you get there, late or whatever, and all you get is a dark hole, or say they have track lighting on one side, not even on the other side. There's shows I go to that are that way, and it makes it really hard to, when you're on that side, and those are the spots that they sell spots for the one place. It's really hard to see names of vehicles of anything going down the track. And that's one thing for me that, from a photographer side, the consistent good lighting all the way through. But yeah, you get a slow night, whether it be track crew, whether it be guys not wanting to get to the line to get over the scales. You can have a bunch of stuff, but keeping the show moving, because no one wants to sit through a long show when it's, slow for any given reason. So those are probably my two big thing that, yeah, exactly, Adam. That's huge. There's so much, benefit to that stuff. There's local clubs that will, involved in stuff that help donate for stuff like that because they use it for other stuff. There's a bunch of stuff out there that you guys can do to get better lighting. Even as something as simple as I'm going to start replacing, half the lights at one point, talk to the local electricians, see if they're willing to help donate their time at least to do some of that stuff. There's lots of different avenues you can go and go towards that, but those are my two big things, I guess. If Reno, Shane, and then the lighting would be my two big things.
Even as a driver, I wouldn't want to be taking a sled up to 30 miles an hour in the dark.
Right.
Nope.
And the end, to go off of that, you got to make sure you got light at the end too.
Yeah.
You get a dark hole at the end, and you don't know if you're coming. A lot of those visors type of thing, you're supposed to have your visor down. If they're tinted visors or dark visors, you can't see, period. And you get to the end of the track where it's dark, and you don't know whether you got 5 foot left or you got 30 foot left, and either one can make you come off the throttle and want to stop. And so that's a big thing for everybody, like you said.
Yeah, I agree. People are mentioning speaker systems and the sound system and distance boards. Yeah, for sure. Those enhance the experience of being there. Especially if you don't necessarily know all the drivers or whatever, that announcer is your key to know who a certain guy is that you're watching. I think the sound system is important back in the pit area for the reason Doug mentioned, and that is just keeping everybody on the same page as far as how the show's progressing and where we're at and what we're doing. There's great things we can do with these group chats and whatnot on smartphones we have today that didn't exist a long time ago. It's a good tool that I see particularly getting used very, very effectively on the drag racing side, but not everybody has that, for one. There's people who just, believe it or not, in this world, there's people who just don't do Facebook and aren't in Messenger. Those people exist. And some days I wish I was one of them. But no one ever talks about how, as the announcer, really, you kind of are, in a sense, a show director, and the guys in the pit area are going to respond to what you're saying and when you're saying it. And you do have a responsibility there as well to kind of prep them, kind of let them know, hey, we got 4 guys left in this class. If you're in the next one, you probably want to be up and ready. I saw another one in here about, Brad, having the next pulled ready to go is a killer. It's depending on the show. I see certain sanctioning bodies where there is an official back there telling guys not to start. And frankly, it makes my skin crawl because it is slowing the show down big time. There's some groups I run with back here in Michigan, at least, where we aren't waiting for anybody. That next guy knows when they're up, and when the sled comes back, they're ready to drive out there. I think that's how it should be, really. Yes, and I know some places will go, Chapel Hill, they've got staffing at that level to go find you and get you out there.
Hillsborough is another good one for that.
Yep.
Don runs a pretty tight ship there.
Yes, he does.
They will come and get you and stack you where they want you. But there again, it also comes to, it comes down to having staff to do it and the right staff to do it. Because if you've got somebody, so case in point, since he just joined, thinking back a little bit to our last TPC meeting, Doug, did we not declare that you're the official hard ass for the track crew?
I believe so, but I have to clarify that with Paul because we had that discussion this weekend again. So, Charles, can we call him and get him in on at least on audio?
Probably.
We got through that situation, but it's just not loading.
Right. Okay. Made short of me just having him on a cell phone and just hold it up to the laptop so that it picks up his audio. I don't know how good that's going to be, but
out of curiosity, can you do a Zoom and share your screen? Would that work?
Yeah, I haven't used Zoom since COVID though, 2 years ago.
Well, it's probably gonna give you a 30-minute timeout though. The only kicker.
Yeah.
30 or 45.
Something like that.
Yes.
Yeah, well, shoot. Wish I'd
Cody, do you have a pro account or no?
No, I
Not
don't.
anymore. I don't either.
Yeah, and we
If
use
I could figure out how to get Teams to work on my computer, I'd do that. But
that's what we use at work as Teams, but
it doesn't play well with MacBooks.
no, and for me, it's inside my work. Whatever. It's not going to work. Long story short, no one wants to listen to us talking about that.
Too much inside baseball.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, could we call him? Yeah. Long story short, yes, we could. I wish I would have known an hour ago. I might have been able to cobble something together through my mixer board here and have it be better, but I'm not going to try to do that now. Yeah.
I'll send you his number because I don't have my laptop out. I just got
Okay.
one.
Yep.
Chuck, you're exactly right. Staffing at smaller polls is a huge issue, and most of the time it's volunteer for a lot of this stuff. Anyhow, they're not paid organizations that are doing this, so that's the big kicker. Is kind of be blessed to have the help that they've got, because there's what putting the show on a lot of times too, because they're not paid help to do that, so they're volunteering their time and their effort to go put on a show for all the spectators.
Yep. Exactly right.
I don't think it's I guess this is me kind of just armchair quarterback in this thing, but I don't think it's out of line for a club to put some requirements on the membership to give back a little bit. I mean, I know I'm going to catch hell for that, and somebody's going to say, well, I already pay enough money as it is. Well, this is the sport that you're passionate about.
Right.
Put a little love into it.
Yeah, exactly.
Give back.
Right.
We all do.
Yep, very true. Very, very true. Sorry, I'm looking at multiple things here. All right, let me call him. You guys talk for a minute.
At any rate, with I guess to put kind of a final point on that, Nick Beadle asked the question, and I think he asked it in a couple of different places because I think I saw it on Pull Off too. But if you're out and about and you want to get involved in that conversation, your opinion would be, we'd love to hear it. This is not one of those things that we sponsored. We didn't put Nick up to it. Nick is a board member on a polling association here in Iowa, and he is trying to make things better. He is trying to improve, and he wants that constructive, feedback and criticism. So hop into the Beer Money group. I did pin it to the top or feature it. So you shouldn't have a hard time finding the post. I think it's got 18, 20 comments on it now. But everybody's got an opinion. Share yours. Please do it constructively. Don't just use it as a springboard to badmouth your board members. But there are problems. This sport isn't perfect, and no sport is. Motorsports all kind of suffer some of the same problems. If we're going to figure it out, it may start with us. It may need to start with the membership. Charles, you're on mute.
Yeah,
There
I know. I was talking to Gary, not you.
Gotcha.
All right. I got him on speakerphone. I don't know how well it's going to work, but we'll try.
I'm game.
I can
I
hear
can hear
him.
him.
He can hear
Yep.
us.
Gary, can you hear them on the speaker?
Well, not yet. I haven't heard anyone.
When do you guys say something?
Mic check 1 2 1 2.
I can hear 1 2 1 2.
All right. I'll turn you guys up a little bit. There. Well, thank you for persevering with us and trying to get on. I certainly appreciate you taking time out of your evening tonight to join us. And you certainly had a pretty interesting career, I would say, in the sport of pulling, because the majority of what you did was strictly as an exhibition to put on the show. Some of the things that we spent the last few minutes just talking about.
Yeah, I had 45 years in being involved in truck and tractor pulling, and it was a good part of my life.
You had more than just the Boss. You had several competition vehicles. But before we get into those and kind of what it was like, take us back to the beginning. How'd you get started in the sport?
Well, back in 1974, when I first started, I'm a farmer by trade, and we had a young farmers organization in my local town of Eldred Springs, Missouri. And we had a meeting one night, and this gentleman came in and said, "You guys need to put a truck pull on to make some money for your club." Of course, we knew what tractor pulling was, and all the guys had pickups, and they always thought they were the hottest thing on the road, which we found out they weren't. But anyway, so we organized our first pull in, I think it was like July of 1974. And anyway, I didn't do very well the first time, but I sure learned a lot by watching other people, as I did throughout my learning years. I had a 3/4 ton Chevy pickup. I thought that was pretty hot, but that sled told me that it wasn't as hot as I thought it was.
Sleds have a way of doing that, don't they?
Yeah, really. But you just ask me what you want, or I can talk for hours about what my early experience was, and with my boss too.
Yeah, and you're the guest. This is your show, man. Anything you want to share with us about those times? Absolutely, we want to hear it.
Yeah, we're willing to listen.
Okay. Well, back when I had the first pull, and I think there were about 20 trucks in my class, and at that time the rules were, let's see, run what you brung and hope you brought enough. No rules per se, but the 3/4 tons, half tons, everything else, they all pulled together, 4 speeds and automatics. And anyway, right shortly after that, my brother-in-law at that time had a race car motor, a 427 Chevy that he'd built up. So I thought, man, this is the thing to do, so I have more power. So I put that motor in my pickup, and my truck was an automatic, and I learned by doing. I went to the Ozark Empire Fair in Springfield, Missouri, and fell on my face because the motor was made to wind up. It wasn't made for low end torque.
Yeah.
But anyway, I went back to my 350 Chevy that I had before, and I went to all the local pools around the area, out 150 miles or something like that. Everyone said Collins would go 100 miles for $20 and a trophy, and that's about what I did. But it was a fun time doing it, and so anyway, I did that for, that was 74. In 1979, I jumped up to another class. I should have said I was pulling in what we call the stock class back in the early days. But in 1979, something about power that I always liked. And so I jumped up to the modified class, which, you could put any motor at that time. You can put any motor you wanted to in your truck and pull with it in that class. And let me back up one more time. Back in 1975, a friend of mine, J.C. Schumeyer from Monroe City, Missouri, he started going around to all the local pools and getting names of pullers so we could get together and organize Tri-State Truck Pullers Association and lay down some rules. So the fall of 75, 300 people went to Monroe City, Missouri at the high school, and we sat there for 3 days and hashed out rules, which was a hair-pulling experience because everyone said, well, I can't run that way. I got to run this way. But we all ended up doing it. We were happy with it, and we used those rules to police everything we had because any kind of sport, there's always some cheaters in there somewhere. So we had to kind of overcome that so everyone would kind of be equal in their own class. So anyway, I pulled that class, which was a stock automatic class from basically 75 to 79, and went like many places. I got a basement full of trophies and $20 bills stuck to them. But in 79, I decided I was going to jump up to the modified class. And I've always been a Chevy man, but I had some tractor pulling friends that ran Hemi motors, and I'd never been around them before. And he told me, one of my buddies told me, you need to put 426 Hemi in your truck instead of using a Chevy because, they thought they were more powerful. So I had a Chevy pickup, and I had the Hemi motor in it. And the first time, after I got everything set up with the gear ratio and the transmissions and everything else, and I pulled a little town of Rich Hill, Missouri, north of me a little ways, and it gave me quite a buzz. And I'd never been behind that kind of power pulling a sled before. So I started doing the same thing that I did before, but instead of pulling in the stock class, I was pulling in the modified class. And with Tri-State Truck Pullers, at that time, we set up, say if you wanted to sanction a pull and use our rules, you had to pay what we did, and that first place was $125 on down to $10, which wasn't much, but at that time we were too excited about the money. We just wanted the sport to grow. So I pulled at the Missouri State Fair in August of 79, and I won my class in the 6,200 modified class, and I won $500. And that's the most I'd ever won before, because usually it's $100 or less. So at that time, a company called Truck-O-Rama had sent out the flyers. They'd got our mailing list of the Tri-State Truck Pullers, and they sent everything out. And they had a pool in St. Louis, Missouri, and first place was $2,500.
Wow.
And that kind of sparkled my eye a little bit, but that was during when the fair was going on. It was already passed, but we got the flyer like when we got home. So the next pool was at Wichita, Kansas, and which is about 180 miles from me. And so I went out there because I was on high after winning the Missouri State Fair. And I pulled out there. Well, before we pulled, I talked to George Carpenter. George worked for Truck-A-Rama, and he was a head tech man. And they didn't actually have any rules per se, like what we did with Tri-State truck pullers. So before the polls came that night, George and I sat down and they adopted our rules that we had with Tri-State. And so later that night, I pulled and I broke the rear axle, so I didn't win anything. But I told these people, you know, I said, I enjoy pulling and I'd like to travel a little bit. And I'm trying to think where the next pull was at, but I was ready for it and I placed good in it. And, you know, I think I've gotten $2,000 or something like that. But that was quite a bit more than 500 or 100 that I'd ever had before. So the Truck-A-Rama people at that time, what it was called, later to be called SRO Promotion, I talked to him and I told him, you know, I said, I'd like to travel with you. You know, I'm a farmer, but in times when I can get away, I want to go. So they said, well, if you be there, we'll give you show-up money and a guarantee against the winning. So that sounded pretty good to me. I think the next place we pulled was in Indianapolis, Indiana, and it was an indoor pull. The shortest track I ever pulled on in my life is 160 feet, and it wasn't even hard enough time to get cranked up before you're already at the end. But it there, and Tony Vaquero and Bob George, they liked what I had, and they said, if you're wanting to travel, you know, we're going to put a lot of pulls on this year, and so on and so on. So anyway, I pulled with them the rest of the year, maybe 4 or 5 more pulls, and then when we started out in January, I was at Omaha, Nebraska, and Bob George was the main man with Truck-A-Rama or SRO. And I told Bob I wanted to talk to him about building another truck. So we sat down and visited, and I said I want to build a 2-engine truck. So he said, well, you've been around pulling a while. You build a truck, and we'd make a rule book around what you got. And I said, well, that sounds pretty good to me. So as the summer progressed, I was working on it between my farming stuff, but I was still pulling my modified truck with them. And of course, they were, you know, when you're going to get done, when you're going to get done. Well, it didn't actually get done with that until January of 1980. Yeah, 1981. I can't remember which one it was. Anyway, I went to Chicago, Illinois at Rosemont Horizon. Made my debut with my first 2-engine truck. And I always get very excited before a pull, but I was really excited about this deal. And so I pulled, and the suspension wasn't good enough, and it bounced. So I had to let off of it. And so I thought, well, I've got to take it back home because of the extra weight of the 2 motors when I'm out front of the axle and everything else, trying to get my balance right. So I redid my suspension, and after that, I'm thinking maybe another 2 weeks later, I looked steady, and it made a smooth run because I had the suspension right. So that was all good, and they liked what they saw with me, and so we started traveling mainly in the first quarter and the third quarter, and a little bit in the fourth. But the year, which was good for me, they didn't do anything, so I had time to take care of my farm.
I was going to ask you. It sounds like you know, truck particularly being basically using the same tires you'd find on a two-wheel drive truck, front and back. I wondered how long it took you to get it to actually kind of behave, and it sounds like you might have gotten on top of it real early.
I did after that first pull. There were some other guys there in Chicago that had super modified pickups, which I used to have also. I kind of skipped over that, but I watched them pull, and in the early days, I did as much watching as I did pulling, because if someone had problems, I was trying to figure out why, and the same way, to help myself. And this one guy had more of a kind of floating type suspension, and I kind of copied his a little bit and put it in my truck, and it ran good. And from that day on, I had the same thing, and it's always worked pretty smooth. I very seldom ever had any problem with it jumping or anything like that, like I did before. But
that's a good thing. It's good to figure that out early and save yourself from a lot of busted parts.
Yeah. Well, in that stage, I had the right suspension, but I didn't have the right differentials under my truck. I started braking the right front axle every time I pull, because the torque of the motor's to the right, and so I put the load on there, and then the left front tire, it's got to do all the work, and it don't work that way. So after that year, I went through that 1 year with the truck with braking axles. I didn't brake every time, but I did some. So I found a rubber tire loader, and the old style that used to steer in the rear instead of articulate like the later models were. And I got those rear end axles, and I put them under my truck. I had to machine the brakes and the outer bolt pattern off of it, so I get 16-inch wheel over the top of them, and take the brakes off, and I tried to lighten it up as much as I could so it didn't add a lot of weight to my truck. And so I had a friend here in town, a machinist, that did a lot of work for me doing that, and so I get my wheel bolted on and everything was good. And from that point on, I never broke an axle and never broke a drive shaft. And those planetary axles is what saved everything. The only thing bad is it creates drive shaft speed, because when I pull, the drive shafts turn faster than my motors do.
Okay, yep.
But RPM doesn't hurt like torque does as far as a load's concerned.
Right. What did your truck weigh ready to run?
6,500 pounds. That's what it weighs.
Really? Wow. Yeah. I would have thought it'd be a lot heavier than that. That's impressive.
Well, whenever I put those planetary axles under it, my truck, I gained 400 pounds, and then I found 400 pounds to take off of it, so I didn't really. I didn't actually weigh 6,500 before, but I still stayed in that same area.
That's impressive to me. It looks like there's so much more there than 6,500 pounds.
Yeah, well, the cab was aluminum. Kenworth cab was aluminum, and the cab didn't weigh anything. The sleeper didn't weigh anything. Just the frame and the running gears.
Yeah, I suppose that's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
What motor were you running in them at that time?
Well, when I first ran, I kind of skipped over my super modified truck. I only ran it for 2 years. But the super modified truck had one supercharged Hemi in it. And, of course, I took that motor out and retired that truck. And then I bought another Hemi to hook up to it. So they were basically, they were pretty much 426 Hemis at that time. I didn't actually add anything to them, just the idea that they had blowers on them, and they were iron block motors. And but they were tough, but I needed something tougher to get me longevity, because I know that the old blocks and the heads and everything else wouldn't stand a lot of extra stuff. So I had those for that the start of that year, and then I bought 2 aluminum motors, and I think they were 491 motors, cubic inches, and I had 1071 superchargers on them, and I'd say they were like 1,500 horse apiece at that time. And then I got it bigger. I went to 540 cubic inches and 1071 blowers, and actually these last ones, those 10s, the last ones were 1471 high helix. So they put a lot more air in there, and I didn't have to turn them as hard as I did the smaller blowers.
As time goes on and people start getting an awareness of this thing too, you do want the reliability in there because people are expecting to see it. They're coming to this big arena show and want to see this thing run.
Yeah, but when I first made it, I called it the Little KW.
Yep.
Bob George told me, he said, we cannot advertise little. So he said, you're going to call it the Boss. And I said, okay, you're the man. So I did. But that's what it was the first year that I had it. It was called the Little KW, and then Kenworth didn't like that very good, so I had to take the word KW off of it. But anyway, then it just became the Boss for quite a few years until 1986, when I got with Anheuser-Busch, and then it was called Budweiser Boss after that.
What prompted the switch over to the Ford Aeromax?
Well, a little young man that was son of the guy that worked for Ford at Light Truck. We were in St. Louis, and I pulled there, and this gentleman's name was Les Day, and we stayed friends from that day on. But I'd always tried to send something to them to see if they'd be interested, Ford, to be interested in changing my truck to a Ford. Well, I wasn't very successful, but anyway, they're back to St. Louis, and this young man asked his dad, which was Les Day, said, Dad, how come Gary's truck's not a Ford? He said, well, I never thought about that, but he said, we'll see if we can do something about it. So after that pool was over, and this boy was 8 years old when they were talking to his dad, same age as my son at that time. And when I got home, St. Louis is only 300 miles from me, but the next day, Les Day called me, and he said, I want you to come to Detroit, and I want to introduce you to Ford heavy truck operation. So I said, okay, I'll be there. A couple of days later, I flew up there and met with Les, and then he took me up, I think it was the 5th floor there in the Renaissance Center where heavy truck was at, Ford heavy truck, and I went up there and sat down with those people there, and I just lost the guy's name that I first talked to, Ken Havoc. Ken and I became good friends, and he liked what I had, and since Ford Light Truck was a sponsor of the event, and Budweiser was a sponsor of the event, that all kind of fell in place. So whenever they had the brochures to hand out to people when they first came in, before I got with Ford, it had my Kenworth truck on the top and Bigfoot's truck on the bottom, Ford and Budweiser. And then after I changed over to Ford, it still had the same, but it was a Ford Budweiser Boss, and then Bigfoot and I were on the same brochure. Bob Chandler and I have been friends since 1975, I think, and still are. But that's how I got working with Ford, and then Ford and Budweiser together, it was kind of a double whammy. And I couldn't ask for any better two sponsors. And it lasted for 10 years, until Ford sold out to Mercedes back in '97. But I kept it as a Ford for quite a while after that, and I still truck pull with it as a Ford until 2010, and I changed the body back to Kenworth with a different body, but it's still a Kenworth body like it was before, and ended up as a Kenworth. I started that way, so I wanted to end up that way. Ford was good to me for 10 years, and of course, whenever someone buys somebody else that way, you kind of fade away.
Yep, it does tend to happen.
Yeah.
I'm going to play a clip real quick. You obviously won't be able to see this, but after I play it, I want to ask you about this, and I'm sure you probably know what's coming with this, because I want to find out if it was spur of the moment or was this planned.
We get no sound, Charles.
I can't hear it.
Well, it's the run where you took the sled around the corner.
Oh, yeah. Well, I got to think of my buddy Mike Galloway. He was an announcer and best announcer you'll ever have. And he pumped me up all the time. But I did that. Well, my first time I did it, I was in Houston at the Astrodome. And then I did it in the Pontiac Silverdome twice. Seemed like I did one other time. In the Superdome down in New Orleans. But it's kind of hard on pieces parts whenever you let off the blowers and get back on them. But I made it. Well, Anaheim, California. That's where the other place was at, yeah.
I think for a lot of those back in those days, a lot of times you were hooking to the Ellenbaum sleds. Did you give those guys a warning, or did you just take them for a ride?
Well, the Ellenbaum brothers were the best guys that ever hooked a sled. I couldn't go fast enough for them, and a lot of sled operators didn't like that because they said, well, you're out of control. But with Ellenbaum guys, they knew what I was going to do, and I knew what they were going to do, so we never had a problem. But some of the earlier sleds, when I first built my truck, they said, you don't know how fast you go down the track. And I said, well, hang on. But I was, I'm in mid-90s. I was up at the Buck in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. And we pulled in the afternoon and then right after lunch, and then we'll go pull that night. And the city police were there with a radar gun. And the modified trucks, which would be a naturally aspirated four-wheel drive pickup, they were running 17, 18 mile an hour. And if they usually made over 18, they would make a full pull, and which was great. So when I pulled in the afternoon, you had a gun on me, and I was running 45 mile an hour.
Oof!
Wow.
And
How fast?
45.
Holy crap!
No wonder he told him to hang on.
And it's a terrible feeling when you can feel that sled kind of whipping on your ass a little bit. And anyway, that night when I pulled, basically it got the same speed. But those yellow grasshoppers that hit your windshield once in a while.
Yep.
I had one of them hit me right in front of my face. It scared me to death. I thought I'd blow the motors up. That night in Lancaster. But the city cop said I'd run 45 mile an hour.
Man. And they didn't have race sleds back then. That was cooking.
Right.
I was trying to think. I don't think Ellenbaum had the sled there, but one of my friends that he used to truck and track school, Mike Hoff.
Yep.
He had bought that grounds, and he was putting monster truck stuff on, truck and tractor pulls, mud marathon, something different every week. And I haven't talked to Mike for probably 10 years. I don't know if he still has it in operation or not.
As far as I know, the buck is still there, but I want to say I saw something that Mike had passed away recently.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. Mike had a 3-engine tractor he pulled with Hemis in them, and then whenever I had a funny car 2-wheel drive puller, and he had one too called. And in fact, when he retired that, I bought the rear axle from him, or actually the frame and the rear axle, and then I had a 33 Ford Victoria that I pulled 2-wheel drive. And
I forgot about that one. Yep.
yeah, but Mike and I were good friends. I sure hope he hadn't passed away, but some of us guys are starting to get old.
Did anything ever come up with essentially a competitor or an adversary for the boss, or did that just stood head and shoulders above on its own?
Well, back when I started in the second year, there were 7 different. We call it super experimental, whatever that is, class, and there were 7 of us at one time.
Okay.
And I only saw most of them once, but there was a guy out in California. He had like a 36 Chevy. He had 2 Rodeck motors in it, and there was another guy out there that had a 3/4 ton GMC pulling truck, and he had an Allison aircraft motor in it, and he sat in the bed of the truck. And
I don't remember that one. Wow.
I only saw him one time.
That's probably why I don't remember him.
But his steering was screwed up, and his front tires, they went back and forth. He couldn't control it, and apparently he'd never hooked a sled before because it didn't do any good. And the guy that had the 2-engine Rodeck, 36 Chevy, I think, it was called the Falcon. And I think it's still in existence. I don't know that they still run it or not, but he had trouble with his suspension too, and it'd make it jump. And I think I probably pulled maybe a dozen times when he was in the same pull. But he always had problems with his truck bouncing or something with the motors. Alan Gaines had a twin screw. That was his 4-wheel drive instead of like front and back. And he pulled some that way too. And I was trying to think, Max Smith out of Preston, Iowa, he had a Jeep that he had for a couple of times, and that he gave up on it. But most of them, they quit. So that just put me in the extra, experiment, just to pull for power, and instead of running competition. But I did that for quite a few years until, SRO got sold out in 1993, and all the indoor truck and tractor pulling very well ceased at that time.
Kevin James sent us a question. He's asking if Bud Jaskey ran the Express against you.
Yes, he did. In fact, Bud and I have been friends a long time because he ran modified class when I did too. And Bud always ran Arius motors in his modified, and he had it in that Express too. But he had problem with his suspension also. And I don't know that I ever did get to see him make a good pull because it always wanted to bounce with him.
And that one, if I remember right, Gary, that one had big tires in the back like you, but the fronts were the smaller, 4-wheel drive size. Yeah.
He had matched the drive axles up so they would pull the same.
Yeah.
But and I always liked Bud. And I used to see. I went to the Mid-America Truck Show in Louisville, Kentucky for 30 years, and Bud didn't live too far. Well, he lived in Wisconsin, but it wasn't all that far. And see him on walking around. But they ended up putting that in 2-wheel drive instead of 4-wheel drive, and then it ran a lot better. But he had some kind of suspension problem, so it just never did go right.
When you were doing a lot of the heart of the indoor type seasons, what was a typical week like for you during that?
What do you mean by my week?
As far as like a schedule, did you have one event for the week that you had to get to, or multiples that you had to try and travel and do your maintenance all at the same time?
Yes. Well, in the latter part of SRO, they were running like 5 events on a weekend, different parts of the United States. And my longest ride was from San Diego. I pulled there, and then I pulled in Anaheim, California, and then I went from there to Upper Marlboro. There in I think that's in New York. I can't remember for sure, but about 3,300 miles across the United States. But I went home and hugged my wife and kissed my kids and went on down the road. Normally it wasn't everything like that, but we'd run. Well, I think the most I'd ever did like 21 hooks for 20 events per year there for quite a few years. And but we'd run a lot in the first quarter, and then in some in the third quarter, and a little bit in the fourth quarter. But usually the second quarter, there was very little SRO wouldn't do anything at that time.
Gotcha.
Their theory was like when we'd go up in the Northeast in the wintertime, I was always scared to death that I'd get caught in a 20-foot snowdrift up there, but I never did. But it was entertainment to them, and we want to entertain people. So in the Northeast, we go up there and pull indoors. People want to go see events, but they want to be comfortable when they did. So in indoor arenas, that was the way it happened. And we went to Tucson and Phoenix, Arizona in August when it's hot as blazes there. And you don't lay a wrench down on the asphalt when you pick it up and later it burn your hand. But, that was entertainment for them, but it was pulling for us. And it worked good because, very, very seldom you ever had a short crowd. The stadium was always packed. Like Anaheim had 60,000 people there every time we were there, and Pontiac Silverdome had their best deal with 74,000 people there, and in all those big domes and stadiums, they always filled them up. And that little story about the Silverdome. Whenever we pulled there in '84. They usually got security by how many advance tickets that sold. And they were anticipating 20,000 people. They had security for 20,000 people. And of course the old Silverdome's no more. There was a wall around the outside of, like what was the football field. And anyway, after the pool got started, and some guy jumped over the wall down on the floor. And we had our vehicles back up against the wall, and the track was right in the middle of the stadium. And after one guy jumped over the wall, 10,000 people jumped over the wall. And I've got a picture of it somewhere. All you can see is the track down the middle, and you can't hardly see our vehicle. And they didn't have security enough to keep people off the floor. And later they would stop the events and you got to get back, you're going to get hurt. And our vehicles were back against the wall. We were probably 30 feet away from the track. We couldn't get to it because people were in front of us. So the security would back them up so we get out, and then have to back them up so we get back in again. It was painful, but they were happy because they had 74,000 people there.
I think I've seen photos someone took from way up in the rafters.
Yeah.
Of that. Yeah. People everywhere.
Yeah, but I love the Silverdome. In fact, I've got 2 seats out of that when they tore it down. Had a friend that was working at construction to tear it down, and he saved me 2 seats out of it.
Oh, that's cool. It's
Cool.
unfortunately, it's a Amazon warehouse now is what's there.
Is it?
Yeah, it's about 20 minutes from me here.
Yeah. They filled it all back up.
Yep. It's you'd never really to go over there. You'd never know it ever existed, really.
Well, that's sad.
Yeah.
It was such a great place, but when they made that dome downtown Detroit, they just quit using it. But I don't know. Like I said, in '93, after Charlie Mancuso stopped all the indoor pulling, he pretty well shut my career down too. But I still pulled after that, but nothing like I did before.
Right. What led to that? What was the change? Because it seemed like it was a huge thing, and suddenly it wasn't.
Well, like I said, every place would go, you basically take the same show, a different town, go back again next year, and then people come too. And it was a win-win deal for us and for them. And whenever SRO sold out and Charlie Mancuso got in charge of it, we're paying them pullers too much money. We're going to get some cheap monster trucks in here and quads and we're going to make more money. And so it shut a lot of people down, including me, but I still pulled, but I didn't pull like, 20 events a year.
Right.
Maybe 6 or 7 at the most. But I got a master list for all the Budweiser distributors and all the Ford dealers, and I sent flyers out to them, and they would use me for events where it was a truck pull or where it was, something else going on. They'd use my truck for that.
Yeah, my promotional tool.
Right.
Yeah, which makes sense.
Yeah, and it worked good. I pulled in Stockton, California, and met some good people out there. And in fact, they pull up in Kansas City every year in February, and I always go up and see them. But Budweiser took me out there because I sent that flyer out to them. And Lodi, California, and Stockton are the grape capital of the world. And so I was out there. They were having a fair going on. And then we pulled the next week later. They had a truck pull there.
Mr. Donnie Reeves.
Yes.
I kind of figured that's who you were talking about.
Yep.
Yeah. He helped put on the pull there in Lodi, and we become friends after that because we stayed there an extra week because the fair was over and the pull wasn't until the week after. But yeah, he pulls up Kansas City, so I go up there and see him every year. There's a lot of other good pullers out in California. The first year we pulled there in 1982, California always had hot motors, but they didn't have trucks to maintain the power. And the first year we pulled out there, they said, we can't compete with these Midwest truck pullers. So the next year we went out there, and they had a California class and a Midwest class. And then the next year after that, everyone pulled together again because they finally kind of caught up.
Yeah, we've been fortunate enough to befriend a few people out there, and it doesn't get, I guess, the coverage you'd expect, but there's some good pullers and some really fun people that are part of this sport out in California.
100%.
Yeah. Well, they had, hot rods always started in California and kind of spread to the Midwest, but they had motors, but they just didn't have the truck to make it work. But we made some good friends out there the first time, and each time we go back. But I went to, first, San Diego used to be, see what the name of that was, but anyway, when the Chargers were down there, we pulled there one weekend, the next weekend we pulled at Anaheim. And I did that, I think in 84, pulled in San Diego, Anaheim, then we pulled at Tacoma, Washington, then Seattle, and then I came home.
Did you ever make any of the trips and go pull in Hawaii?
No, the promoter called me, and their pull was in June, and you had to take your truck to California put it on the boat, and then it took 2 weeks to do that to get it to Hawaii, and then you were out there for a week and then come back. And it was always right in the middle of my wheat harvest, and I never could go. But I always wanted to. I thought that'd be a good experience, but just never did happen.
Yeah. No, I can totally appreciate where you're coming from as far as that goes. Yep. Makes sense.
It just took up too much time. You know, it took a month right out of the middle of summer, and I needed to be working here at home, so I just kind of had to pass every time.
Yeah.
There used to be a promoter that he took some trucks up to Alaska. One of my buddies, Russell Pearson, he had a tractor, and then he had a two-wheel drive turbine puller. I think an S-Stone Chevy. But he went to Alaska one year, pulled up there, and I never did hear any more about it other than that just one-time deal for him anyway.
Gotcha.
That'd be cool. To say you went to Alaska and pulled, that'd be cool.
Yep.
Yeah. Or to Hawaii.
Well, Hawaii
Cody,
too.
Cody, have you seen the photos of the Alaska pulling?
No.
There is a circuit in Alaska.
Yeah. See if I can
Still
find
today, and I mean it's mainly antiques, but
They're there.
still, you're there, and there's glaciers behind you, and it's pretty legit. It looks cool as all get out.
As a camera guy, I feel like my finger wouldn't go like this anymore. I feel like it'd be cold.
Yeah. Wonder what town it's in.
Right.
I don't remember, Gary. I have seen the photos, but I cannot for the life of me remember the name of the town.
Yeah, it'd be cool. I think that back when Russell went up there, it wasn't paved; it was gravel. And from Seattle on up north there, that Alaskan Road or what it's called, they had to put chicken wire on the head of their headlight, keep getting the headlight busted out, and everything else goes. Guys, I think it's like 1,100 miles or something like that of gravel.
Yeah.
Oof.
It's been well, that was back in the late '80s whenever Russell went up there. But he was talking about. I saw him later on, but like I said, he used to run with us all the time too. He had a turbine two-wheel drive, and he had a turbine tractor before that. But he's the only one that I knew that ever went up there.
I did find one photo, and the name of the town is Palmer, Alaska, and it's an old school like pullback style sled. I mean, it's antiques. It's a little bit primitive, but they're doing it.
That's good.
Yep.
It'll be all right.
Yeah, there's mountain scenery everywhere.
Yeah. Well, I sure
So
enjoyed
Gary,
domes and civic center we pulled in over the years, and of course, most of them domes have been torn down and built another one. But like the King Dome, I always like to be up there, which it rains in Seattle every day, and I never did understand why they tore a dome down and built an open top stadium. But so be it. It was their deal. But they built a parking lot right beside the King Dome and tore the King Dome down. But I went up there probably at least 6 different times, and I had at one time I had a funny car puller, and I'd always take it up there too. And then later I had my two-wheel drive Vicky. I took it up there a couple of times too before SRO got sold out.
How many of your old pullers do you still have? Just the Boss, or?
Yeah, that's all I had. I had a little thing called divorce happen back in '02, and unfortunately I kept my truck and my land, but I had to part with a lot of toys. I sold my Vicky and I had to part it out. The guy that bought it, the association wouldn't let you run aluminum motors, so I sold the body and run gears to him, and I sold the motor to somebody else and the transmission to somebody else. And at that time, I was also collecting British motorcycle, Triumph. I don't know if you know the name or not, but at that time I had 50 motorcycles, and I've been collecting them all over the United States because of my travels, and I'd find them, or we had a magazine stuff that I could find them on, and then I'd catch them, and then I'd bring them back home in my trailer. But they all went away too. I still got 6 left, and that's not hardly enough for one guy to have. But anyway, I had to sell that Vicky, and I kept my truck. And anyway, but at that time, I mean, the pulling stuff had slowed down a lot for me. But I still enjoyed doing displays or exhibitions or whatever. I had my truck out last year 2 times, and the year before 2 times, but mainly just to fly the colors for a pull that they had going on.
We might have to talk about the Pullers Championship.
I tried last year and we couldn't make a deal go.
Well, the worst part, I sold my truck and trailer, so I don't have any way to haul it around. I borrowed a local guy's trailer at low slung because of the way my axle set back on it with the motor out front, the bumper out there. It's hard to load on a regular trailer. But with my semi trailer I had, well, it was easy, no big deal. But that's what I used to take it to our little town of Lamar, Missouri. The last time I had it down here, about 30 miles south of me. They've got a nice place they had a nice pull down there. And I have a lot of friends around Lamar too, so I hadn't got to see them, and they hadn't got to see my truck either. But I enjoy doing that, but I wish I could pull it. I tell you what, there's nothing like to sit behind 4,000 horsepower, run 45 mile an hour down the track.
I imagine not.
Yeah.
Tough to top that.
Yeah.
Mike Steffen did ask, do you know how many states you pulled in?
48.
All right, there you go.
All the Providence and Canada except Manitoba.
I don't imagine there's a very long list of guys who could ever say that.
I don't know anything.
No.
Yeah. Yeah, SRO pulled up in Canada some, but there's another promoter that we pulled up in Nova Scotia and New Brunswick. And then I pulled SRO in British Columbia, and another promoter's in the other one, but I never did get Manitoba.
That's still a pretty impressive run, I gotta say.
My son used to go with me as much as he could, and in the summertime, and he told me when he was a freshman in high school, he said, "Dad, I've been in 27 states." And I said, "There's a lot of kids in your class that haven't been out of state of Missouri." But he liked to go with me, and he just lives about a mile away from me right now, so we work together on my farm stuff. But I just raise cattle and bale hay. That's all. I don't row crop anymore. Machinery got a little too high for me because I only had 500 acres of row crop, and you can't afford to give $500,000 for a combine for 500 acres.
Yeah, I can see that.
I enjoy my cows and my hay, and that works good for me.
Tim Wolf asked, did you ever pull at Richfield Coliseum in Cleveland?
What's the name of it?
Richfield Coliseum.
I don't remember.
If you've pulled in 48 states, I'm sure you've forgotten a whole bunch of them.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
He told me earlier today he's even pulled in Madison Square Garden.
That's right. I did
Yep.
on the fourth floor.
That was a time when the sport really was on its ascendancy, when you could get tractor pulling going on in Madison Square Garden.
Yeah. Yeah, that ramp went from the ground all the way, spiral ramp all the way up to the fourth floor. I don't know what actually they do there. I think it's a basketball court or hockey rink or something. I don't know. But yeah, it was one time it's all I ever was up there.
Pretty cool. Pretty interesting career you've had.
Yeah, I'd like to do it all over again, but it won't happen. And it's got to be a big money game now. You know, like Donnie Reeves told me, that motor that he's got is like $95,000, and and money's ruined the sport.
Yeah, to go from where you the humble beginnings of pulling for $20. The bad part is that now 45 years later, it's not much better in that regard.
Yeah, it's sad. That's what was so good for me with SRO or Truckorama when they started. Guys, they pulled their first place at $2,500, and usually had a 2 or 3 day pull. And I had that modified truck and then the super modified truck that I only had for 2 years. And I'd take them 2 trucks out, and I probably didn't have over $10,000 in both of them together, and bring home $5,000 every weekend.
Yep.
I like that.
Yeah, that math works.
Yeah, that works. Any way you slice it.
Yeah, I used to tell people I farm so I could truck pull, and then I truck pull then later so I could keep farming. Farmers. a lot of in the 80s, a lot of farmers went broke.
Yes.
But I had
sure.
back to help me then, and that got me through. But yeah, like I said, 45 years of good part of my life, and I'd sure like to do it all over again. Just doing like down at Lamar, Missouri, just flying the colors down there, just driving my truck on and off. I mean, my adrenaline was still flowing, but it wasn't flowing nothing like when I took to the sled.
Yep, it's a rush. It's a rush.
Yeah.
Yeah. When I'd go, you know, when we were doing those 21 deals a year, I usually take a roll of Tums to start with, maybe shot Pepto-Bismol before, and then maybe half a roll after I got through. It's just amazing what power like that does to you. I've still got some buddies that tractor pull and truck pull both. A town over here about 40 miles east of me, town of Wheatland, Missouri, where Lucas, in a 200 population town, built a 7,000 seat stadium, and they pull over there in September, and I usually go over and see some of those guys that I used to run with. They're still pulling. Bill Asher is a good friend of mine. He's got a 4-engine tractor, and Gerald Amons, he's got a full drive pulling truck. But Bill used to go about everywhere I was at, you know, when he could, and he was always competitive. But I enjoy seeing my old friends that I don't get to see all the time like I once did.
Yeah, that's almost the bigger piece of it, really, is, you know, a lot of time together with people in a common pursuit, and you forge some pretty strong friendships. And it's kind of a bummer when you go months and don't get to see each other in person.
Yeah.
100% agree.
Yeah, but I feel like I can drive across the United States, and somewhere in that state, you know, I've got a friend.
Yeah.
You know, people get older and pass away and move on, don't do anything, but once in a while I'll run across somebody that I haven't seen for 30 years, and it's kind of like having a class reunion. But, you know, I pulled in Montana and Wyoming, and just one time, but I was there.
That's what counts. Well, we're closing in on an hour with you. Any questions or thoughts for Gary Collins? Get them in the chat, or conversely, any of you guys, Cody, Ryan, Doug, fire away.
So back in the day, Gary, what was the top payout, you know, at the peak of things compared to today?
Well, as an exhibition vehicle, you know, I got paid per se where I was going, but competition-wise, you know, at $2,500 was probably the top deal for the competitors. For the modified class or for the tractor class. They may have got show-up money or a guaranteed against their winnings, but after I got doing exhibition all the time, it just how far it was away from me, how much money I got. My dad always told me when he was alive, son, you're wasting money. And I said, yeah, Dad, but I enjoy what I'm doing. And I said, I make pretty good money. Anyway, I was up at the Kingdom in Seattle when I got back, and he said, how'd you get along? I laid $10,000 on the table, and he said, well, what do you think? He didn't ask me again.
I'll bet he didn't.
No.
No. Yeah, but that was the good thing about SRO. They always paid in cash. And but I did good, and I was happy for what I was doing, and made good money doing it, and enjoyed it.
That's what the main point of pulling is, having fun and enjoying it.
Yeah. It was always good to come home, but it sure was good to get ready to hook onto a sled.
Yeah.
I didn't have to, after I put those planetary axles under my truck, I never did have any problem with running gears or suspension, anything like that. But I did launch a motor in St. Louis one time, and I don't remember if I did any other time or not. They were pretty good to me. I had a good motor guy out in Orange, California that put longevity in my motors, and I didn't abuse them bad. I usually turned 7,000 RPMs, so it wasn't hurting real bad. But I put I guess it probably 10 pulls on them, and then what I would do, I had 3 motors, and I'd keep a freshman with me all the time. And after so many hooks, I would move the front one to the back and then put a new one in front, and move the front one to the back and put a new one in front. So I kept them fresh all the time. And I had some guys that ran semis between here and California all the time, and I'd put them in the back of their trailer, and they'd take them out to my buddy out in California, and then return trip they'd bring them back. So it was easy work that way.
Did you have a transmission in that truck where, if you were indoors at some really short venue, you could go down a gear, so to speak, and account for that, or no?
Yeah, it's got a 4-speed transmission in it. First gear is direct, and the other 3 are low overdrive. So I'd use first gear to kind of just move around with, but I usually pulled in second, third, and I never did actually ever pull in 4th gear. But, the length of the track and the condition of the track is what I selected my gear ratio by.
Gotcha.
But it had a Cryer clutch, and I didn't use a pedal. It was just, I had my clutch set up, and it started forward motion at 1,500 and lock up at 3,000. So that's the way I run it.
Not too far off than what you'd expect, what I would have expected as far as the clutch setup goes then for the power plants. Yeah.
Yeah, it had 5-disc Cryer in it, and it's still in there, but it did good for me. I got when I pulled that modified truck the first time, a buddy of mine that I bought that first iron motor from, I said, I don't know what kind of clutch, but I'll put a Cryer on there, you'll like it. So I never did have a pedal. I always just I put weights on it, to make it come in at a certain RPM, and it always worked good, so I never did use a pedal.
It seems like talking to a lot of modified guys even to this day now. I mean, there's a difference of opinion there. Some guys do use a pedal, some don't.
Yeah, just what you get used to, I guess.
Yeah.
That pull up in Kansas City that Donnie Reese goes to up there, it's all indoors, and they have like a Bobcat or something like that. They've got a boom on in front of it with a pin sticking up. And when they bring you in to get ready to hook to the sled, they put that in there, pick your back end up, and then you just follow them around with the front tires. And when you get through, they pull the sled back from you, and they come up behind you and pick it up and pull you out. And that way, you don't fumigate everything, and you don't have to worry about running your motor.
Yep.
And that was pretty neat the way they did that, because like when back when we used to run modified, and then I'd run or something like that, you drove on and you drove off, and that was one thing about SRO. Whenever they point your finger at you, you had 1 minute to get hooked up, or they jump you back to the next guy. And so they didn't want to lag in the show. They wanted a 2-hour show, and that was it. They didn't want to run full all night long, and it worked good for them.
Yeah, there's a lot of indoor events for going to that style of taking people in and out, and I think it makes it faster.
Yeah. I'm kind of, when I go down that Lucas Bowl down in Wheatland there, they got 2 tracks and they're still lagging time. They wouldn't last with SRO on their show. I mean, they got a lot of vehicles run through. If it takes 5 minutes between hook, people get restless that way.
Yeah.
Especially with tracks, you got to keep going. But it worked good for them, and it worked good for me anyway.
I hear you. Well, Ryan, I think I'll turn you loose on your question.
All right, Gary. So if you were to go pulling today, and you could take anything out, anything you want Donnie's truck, you can take it. You want R41, you can take it. You want a diesel super, you can take it. What would you take pulling, and where would you take it?
Well, I kind of got spoiled by my 2-engine truck, and being an exhibitionist, that was one thing good about it. Everyone was my friend. When you're in competition, don't you look, I may be cheating there. I don't want you to see all this stuff. That was one thing good about what I was doing, but I don't know if I could be competitive pulling in competition now after running exhibition for many years. So that's kind of I don't know question.
That's 2 weeks in a row now. We've actually had a different answer than I expected.
Right.
Like it. Well, Gary, if nothing further from the rest of the guys, I'll turn you loose for tonight. I really want to say thank you and appreciate you taking the time with us.
Oh yeah, I love to talk about my truck. I said I worked with Iowa 80 Group out of Walcott, Iowa for 30 years, and I'd go up to their big truck show in July, second week in July, and I had made a lot of friends up there by doing that, but and a lot of guys had never seen my truck before, but they could actually take their picture beside it or something else, and I'd answer the same question over and over all day long. But that's part of it, and I love my truck and love to talk about it. And these guys, man, if I just had something like that, I could go up needles in a heartbeat. You had to pull a tanker behind you too. But anyway, because the fuel efficiency was the best very good, but it did what it needed to do. Ford made a poster for me back, I think it was 92. We were at Ashland, Kentucky. Yeah, Ashland, Kentucky, at the airport. And it had my semi pointing towards the nose and my pulling truck the other way. Ford semi, Ford pulling truck. And the poster said 7 miles a gallon on the road tractor and 270 gallons per mile on the pulling truck. And because it took 14 gallons to run 300 feet, so you figure that into 5,280, you come up with 270 gallons per That was
Boy,
fun.
that really makes this whole thing sound stupid, doesn't it?
Yeah. Ford was good to me, and Budweiser was too. And I wish it had never gone away, but it did. Bob Chandler told me years ago, of course, Bob's still going with his stuff. He said, get it while you can because it may not last, but I thought mine was going to last more than it did. But thanks to Charlie Mancuso, he fixed that little deal. I'll meet that fat SOB one of these days. But anyway, such is life.
Yep.
But it was a good ride, and I'm sure glad I did it. And I wish I could do it all again.
We'll figure something out. We'll get you to doing some more again.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm gonna let you go for the evening, sir, and we'll wrap
Thank you,
things
Gary.
up.
All right. I appreciate talking to all of you. I love what I did, and I love my truck. And I'm actually trying to put it in a museum, but I had a few guys talk to me about it, but they didn't think it was worth very much, so I'm still got it. But that's my goal, so I can see it once in a while if I want to.
Yeah.
Right now, I can walk down my shop and see it sitting there, and but it'd be nice because a lot of people in this area and all over the United States have seen my truck, and they always like to take pictures beside it. Well, I didn't think I'd ever get to see it up close, But I don't know if it'll ever happen or not. But if not, I'll have it right here with me.
It would be a fitting thing for it. I'll agree.
Yeah. I've got some friends that say Bass Pro in Springfield, Missouri, and they've got a motorsport section in their Bass Pro, and I've tried to work with them a little bit, see if I can get it in, but I just haven't got a hold of the right people yet.
That's the key to it, finding the right person.
Yeah. We've got a guy in Minnesota that wanted it, but he's got his own museum, a private collection, and he offered me a little money, but not enough. But he said, I want it for trade material. And I said, well, I want to be able to see it sometime. But, well, if I trade it to somebody else, maybe you can. But that's been 2 years ago, and I haven't heard from him since.
Kind of feel like I might know who that might be.
So do I. We're not going to say it here.
Yeah, I would imagine I probably know the name too.
Yeah, I can't remember what his name is. I got his number, but after he told me that, well, I never called him back. He's supposedly got, like 50 different vehicles in his museum, and all kind of one of a kind. And that's what mine is, one of a kind, because, they're just one in the other. I mean, nothing that looked like mine or compared to mine, and has done as much as my truck has done over its life.
Right. No, I think yours is about at the pinnacle of those exhibition vehicles.
Yeah. I used the same running gears after I got everything lined out back in '83, and I've just changed the body on it because when it was Kenworth, and then I went to Ford, and I had 2 or 3 different Ford bodies on it, and then went back to Kenworth. But I always used the same running gears because it worked good, and I didn't want to change it.
No, don't mess with what's working.
Right.
That's right. Yeah. Well, if anything else I can do for you, I'll be more than happy.
Excellent. We'll maybe try to do this again sometime when we can get all the technical stuff figured out too.
That'd be good. Don't count on me helping you on that end.
Well, if we can plan ahead for it, we'll figure something out.
All right. Sounds good.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank
All
you,
right, Gary. Have a good night.
All right. Thanks to all of you.
All right. Bye-bye.
See ya.
All right. Well, that was cool. Getting to hear the story behind something that I don't know that I ever got to see him. I went to Silverdome several times. I don't remember that I ever got to see him actually pull it, but certainly knew about it and what it was and what it represented to the sport.
45 miles an hour. Wow.
Yeah. On
Yeah,
one of those old sleds.
We had a 38-mile-an-hour mini rod run Friday night.
Did you?
Oof.
Yeah. On that squirrely sled, that was kind of scary watching, but was Chris.
You mean you didn't volunteer to run that for a class, Doug?
No. Oh, they had a good show down there, really. Once got the track right. The Plumber's Nightmare on Saturday night. Chandler's got the video just about ready to go. He actually broke the tire loose and spun the rim in the tire.
Wow.
Tore all the screws. It melted the bead. It melted the rim. It was made a mess, but
Didn't I read something that he had just changed something in that tractor too? Didn't he put new clutches or something in?
I'm not sure. We didn't have a lot of time. We got down there Thursday afternoon and worked on the track Thursday night, and then we started pulling. We had rain on Friday morning and didn't get started till about 2, and then went right into the evening session. And then Saturday we started again at 1 o'clock. So I didn't get to walk around a lot. I was kind of watching what was going on the track, but
Cool. Well, it's the calm before the storm. Farm show next week. As such, for us on Thursday night with the power ranking show, we're going back to the top. We're going to redo pro stock for next week. And I'm going to go find my old list and see if there's anything I would change about it. Probably there's a few people who think I should, because I certainly heard about it.
Yeah.
But that's part of the fun of doing this too. Well, any final thoughts from the three of you?
I don't think so. I'm ready for bed.
Yeah, me too.
Same.
Yeah.
All right, guys.
Going once, going twice. Sold. Be safe, everybody.
Stick a
See you
fork.
next week.
See you later, guys.